Back. We are Sports Take. Thanks for hanging out with us. I am Rob Ellis. He is Derek Gunn. And man, are we excited to talk to our next guest. It's been a minute since we've had Jason on, and D Gunn's been pestering him enough. He finally gave in.
I've been pestering him for 2 years.
I know, exactly right. And there he is.
Trying to get this man for 2 years.
Jason, it's all right to say it that he's a pest. It's okay.
Hey, there's no better pest than D Gunn. Yeah, no, it's not an issue. Happy to finally make it work.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Jason. I would hit you with this one first. We talk about it all the time. We love the New Heights podcast with yourself and Travis, and I think it's gotten unbelievable, just reviews.
Incredible.
People love it. Favorite guest that you guys have had on? Who would you say it is?
Oh man, Jalen Hurts was really good. I thought that that was our first guest for the most part. We had it was our first official guest. We had a surprise birthday party deal with Paul Rudd, but that was our first kind of test at having a full show with Jalen, and it was really special. Recently, we had Charles Barkley on, big childhood idol, who we looked up to in our household, and so I think that was a good one. And then Andy Reid and all he's meant to us, and Howie Roseman. We've been fortunate. We've had a lot of really, really good people on, but I would say probably Chuck and the first one in Jalen were my personal two favorites.
Hey, Jason, do you guys take the show on the road, and who books your guests for you weekly?
Yeah, our production team does a lot of the booking. Okay. We'll reach out a lot of the times if it's especially a personal connection, and then they kind of facilitate it from there. And then outside of that, sometimes they'll handle it just from the jump. But a lot of the guests we've had on, Travis and I have been pointed to kind of have them specifically on, and we know them, so we've kind of extended the ask. So that's kind of how it goes down.
Do you guys do any prep, or is it better for you guys if it's just off the cuff and you roll before you do a show?
Yeah, we do prep. We do prep right before the show. They usually, depending on, how in advance the show is scheduled, sometimes we kind of got to move around Travis's schedule mainly, or my schedule, with how busy he is these days. But for the most part, we'll get a rundown the night before, and we kind of all go over it, look it through, add things that maybe we want to talk about, take things out that we're like, hey, we don't really want to touch on that. And before the show, we'll do that again. But the best parts of the show and the parts that I think the fans of it respond the best to tend to be the stuff that we just comes off the cuff, and randomly there'll be something that'll pop up that we did through the week, or a movie we saw, or whatever. And that ends up being a lot of the times the stuff that gets the most viral attraction.
My favorite segment, I told this to Derek, you guys sat there and you did the picture of all the coaches at the owners meetings or whatever it was.
How about that?
And Travis didn't know who Brandon Staley was, who's in his own division.
or Josh McDaniels. He missed both of them. And, I would love to give him, a bunch of crap for it. But that's an example right there. That portion wasn't actually in the rundown, right? We knew we were going over the photo, and in the midst of going over the photo, I'm like, dude, I don't think I could name some of these guys. I'm like, let's do it. Let's see if you can start left to right. Let's see how many you get. And then I did it after him, but his was a lot funnier. So we ended up putting that one in the show. But I missed a lot of them too. It's an awkward photo to see and try and pick guys out of, but that was probably one of my favorite parts of the show too. That was a fun one.
In all the years I've known you, I've said two things. Number one, when this man steps in front of a microphone to speaks with passion, speaks with honesty, and is always insightful. But number two, he's not one who actively seeks the camera like some players do. They love being in front of the camera. So I have to ask you, who talked you into doing a podcast?
Well, sorry about that. My brother and I have talked about it for a while. I think that it's always been something that we've kind of toyed around with. We've always tried to figure something out that we can do together. And, whether it's a game show, like we've had so many different ideas. Right. And, I think a podcast seemed to be the easiest because you can do it remotely. Right. You don't have to be in the same space. It offers the most flexibility. So we've thought about it for a number of years. His team A&A management has been trying to facilitate kind of a way to make that happen, and kind of got linked up with the right crew, that, it all the pieces just came together. And I think we felt more comfortable also seeing other players do it and have success, and not, a big worry about starting the podcast was, how the season doesn't go well, this ain't going to go over well, especially in Philadelphia. Like, you're going to see blowback from it. So I think we were both pretty confident with how our teams were going to do. Draymond Green was fresh off of starting his podcast and going to the finals in the NBA the year before we did it. So there was a lot of stuff that was like, you know what, it's worth taking a stab at and getting it going. I reached out to Chris Long, who obviously played with for a couple of years. And he was like, man, my biggest advice is start it while you're still playing. It's going to gain so much traction quicker if you do it while you're still playing. And glad I certainly heeded that advice.
You've had a lot of like pinch me moments in your life. I mean, certainly the playing Travis in the Super Bowl and how crazy that was. But when he was hosting SNL, and you were great too in your cameos that you made. Is there ever a minute where you're sitting in the seats and you're like, dude, my brother's on the stage right now giving a monologue for Saturday Night Live?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was very surreal. That's obviously such an iconic show that we all grew up watching. And I was, first of all, flabbergasted when he told me he was offered to host it. Right. I'm like, wait, they want you to host Saturday Night Live? Like, is this real? But then it kind of hit me again. We were doing one of the rehearsals, right? And this isn't even the dress rehearsal. I think this is the kind of running through the monologue the night before the dress rehearsal and show. And he comes out and he starts crying. And I'm like, what is going on? And I asked him after, so he kind of composed himself, finished his monologue, and they're getting set for the next deal that they're going to practice. I'm like, what? You all right? What kind of got you? What was it? And he said, dude, when I was back there, and I guess I didn't know this, I don't know if you guys know, but that little door that they come out of, that all the guests come out of where the band's playing.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the hosts and people that have been there throughout the history of the show have signed it and written things on it. So like he's back there getting ready to come out, and he's seeing like Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, like all these like iconic people. And I think it just all hit him at one time.
Wow.
Like, dude, I'm about to be on a stage and on a show that is like such an epic scale, and just seeing all those people, I think really just all hit him. Bam.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
That is awesome,
Jason. For as much of an incredible player as you've been throughout your career, and I know you don't like to talk about it, but I think it's a slam dunk. You're going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer when your time comes. That speech you gave after that Super Bowl in 2017 will go down as one of the greatest moments in Philadelphia sports history, and nobody expected that from you. But I was telling Rob earlier, I said I was standing at the bottom of the stairs. And I'm standing and everybody's in their speech, and I see you at the top, and you had a few beers along the way.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm telling my producer, if Jason Kelce gets the mic, this is going to be epic. What you did far exceeded anything I thought was going to come out of your mouth. But I'm leading up to this. Did that moment bring out a side of you that you didn't know existed in terms of passion, being elaborate, and leading up to what you're doing now?
I don't know if that moment, I feel like I've always kind of lived that way. I've just never kind of had that opportunity or that stage. That moment, it felt like it was more than just me. I know that I was up there giving the speech, but it was such passion because, and people are like, did you write it down? Like, I didn't need to write it down. I lived it. Right. So it all just came kind of flowing out. And, I was lying awake weeks leading up to that. And, I very much felt that feeling from, my whole career, the team's whole career, Nick Foles' career, Doug Peterson's, and then obviously the fans trying to get to that moment. So I think it all just culminated perfectly and came out of me. But, I don't know. I think it certainly helped go into this other stuff and definitely gave me a name right away. On a much larger scale. That wasn't the emphasis of doing it, but it's definitely helped launch into other things as well.
Happy byproduct. That's
Yeah,
the- that's the way to
exactly.
put it.
There you go. There you go.
One of the things I know you guys had Barkley on recently as well, as you mentioned. And one of the things I admire about both of you guys a great deal is you're both very accessible. You're not, in some mansion and nobody ever gets to see you anytime. Like I can't tell you how many people on my Facebook page will have a picture of you at the beach with their kids, right? Jason Kelce's having a catch with my son, and this is insane, and whatever. But I love that. Is that can be tough because you do have to sometimes deal with knuckleheads. But was that a conscious decision that you made? Like, hey, look, I'm not going to be one of these guys who just hides. I'm going to live my life like I want to live my life.
Yeah, I try. I think it is a conscious decision to stay grounded and to do the things that you want to do and just live your life. It can be troubling at times for sure. There's no question about it, especially, you're out at a bar with a bunch of people that are drunk. It's not going to maybe be the best time for you sometimes, but for the most part, it's incredibly rewarding, especially with kids. And, you see the joy on people's faces. This is one of the beautiful things that sports does. And, to be able to provide that is truly an honor most of the time. And I think, I still, I want my kids. I don't want my kids to grow up living in a mansion and not, hanging out with kids and going to the ballpark. And, I don't think, I don't view myself any differently than anybody else. And I try to just live my life the same way. And I think that, I don't know that it's like a conscious, like, I'm going to go do this to put this out there. I just think it's, I try to just be who I am. And, that's kind of the way it works.
With you being so accessible, have there been moments though when it's been a little tense or uncomfortable?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, like I said, especially when alcohol is involved. I mean, I got my event coming up this week at the Jersey Shore. But whenever alcohol is involved, people's inhibitions go down. And if I'm in a hurry, and I try and make, I really do want every fan or person that comes up to me to have a good experience, right? I want to, because I know how much they've put into it to give me the opportunity to make as much money as I'm making and play this game for a living. And I think I try to go and do right by them and to be just a good person. But I'm not perfect. I get caught when I'm in a hurry or a bad mood. So, there's awful, there's certainly moments where it hasn't been as fun.
Times in the locker room, you gave me the cross out a couple of times.
That was deserved.
It can definitely happen in the locker room, especially after a loss or things didn't go very well. It's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows in that thing. So
yeah. Well, Jason, let's talk about it because you got the Kelce's annual Team 62 fundraiser for Eagles Autism Foundation. Patty's Green at O'Donnell's Poorhouse in Sea Isle. That's 6 days from now. It's June 28th. And it's 6A to 6P. I know you're also going to be guest bartending at the OD as well. And I know what a hit this has been. It just the video of it has been phenomenal the last couple of years. I wasn't down there in person, but I heard it was just unreal. Yeah, I mean, listen, anybody that's been to the shore knows that everybody's looking to have fun already. They're just looking for an excuse to have a good time, right? Exactly. And it's the OD is that kind of bar where you're looking to have a good time and party and hang out with friends. And they've been kind enough to let us use their facilities, their staff, donate to Eagles Autism Foundation. And, my brother came for the first time last year and he's like, man, I do a lot of charity events. That's probably the most fun I've ever had at a charity event. Awesome. It's nobody's taking themselves too seriously. We're all just out there to raise money for a good cause, but more importantly, hang out and have fun. Like, I think it all goes hand in hand, and you can do all three of those things at this event. And I certainly plan on doing that.
Now, anytime in all the years I've covered this game, one thing I love to ask current and former players is this: when they make the transition from an athlete to the media side. So I've got to ask you this.
Okay.
What have you learned about yourself now that you're on this side of the microphone that you didn't really care for when you were on the other side of the microphone, but you have a better appreciation for it now?
First of all, one thing that I didn't know was, how hard it is. I think interviewing somebody and trying to create like a purposeful conversation and steer it while it's still coming off genuine and normal
Yep.
is not an easy task. And actually putting in work so that you're prepared and not just, kind of shooting from nowhere in the middle of the show. I've gained a bunch of respect just from that side of things. And even more so, to be honest, when I went to broadcast boot camp and like, traditional media routes where you're like in a studio, and that's like a whole nother level of difficulty and preparation that needs to go into that. So, I think I've certainly gained that perspective. And I think I've already had this perspective, but, I think a lot of guys, and I say this because in particular, because Philadelphia is a tough market to play in for a lot of players. I think a lot of guys view people that say negative things about them as though it's like a personal affront, or like it's unfair that they're being attacked, and they become defensive right away. And I think, first of all, going through it for my own career and being up and down and all that, but then also being on the media side, I think, the media is just going to say what they think and, what has been put out on the field. It might not be right all the time, and the person saying it might have the wrong opinion on it, but it's not ever something that I think players should take and, get offended by for the most part. I think the reality is, everything you do is kind of what ends up getting said most of the time. And, what you do out on the field ultimately controls what is said about you. And I wish more players got that. I think every player kind of has to go through this to learn that side of things. And some guys get it. And in this city, if you get it, it works out really well. And some guys don't get it. And if you don't get it in this city, it's not going to work out very well. So I think, the honesty that the media has to have to be, one, good at their jobs, but also two, accountable to their viewers, is something that I think at times is rough to take as a player. But, you see it firsthand when you start doing it, that it's a requirement of the job.
Jason, I know you think long and hard and you deliberate whether or not to come back each year. I know you've done that the last few years, and I think everybody's thrilled that you're coming back again. That's for sure. How much of your decision came down to love of the game versus, man, I want to get one more of these? We came close. We came so close last year. How much of it was that?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I tried to remove as much of winning another Super Bowl as much as I can, because there's so many things that go into that, right? And you got to stay healthy. The team's got to be in the right spot. You got to have things fall your way. Like there's a lot that goes into winning a Super Bowl, and I think that we are definitely we're in position to compete for another one. There's no doubt about that. We got the roster, we got great coaches, we got a great front office. We have a lot of things necessary to do that again. And I think that is weighing on it, but I try to not let that influence it. I really just, the more I talk to people every year when I'm going through this decision, I probably shouldn't need to talk to people anymore, because they just tell me the same thing. Don't stop playing until you don't want to play anymore. And I'm like, guys, I think I'm going to always want to play. I just don't think I should be playing anymore. And they're like, well, Jason, whether you know it now or not, there's going to be a day you wake up and you're not going to want to play football anymore. And almost all the guys say, like, do not stop until you're ready to say you're done. Because once you make that decision, it's over. And there's no really going back. I mean, you can try and go back. Some guys have, I guess, but it's not a good situation. So, just look at it from that lens. And I think that's helped me the most. But if I'm going to go back to the Super Bowl thing, I will share this. My brother, last year at this OD event, we were talking on WIP, and he mentioned, I won a Super Bowl and then I lost a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, and losing a Super Bowl will never make you want to go back and win one, that much more. And at the time I thought he was just saying something that was good for radio and trying to be dramatic and whatnot. But that is hit me harder than ever now, being on the other side of this thing and having lost one now. I think it for sure, you can try and not let that be a factor. But man, the hunger and the desire to get back there and to finish it, even though it's going to be a completely new season, a new set of guys, and it's not the same team, you can't help but that be a factor for sure.
Mhm.
Jason, when you look at where you are in your career right now, and and you've talked for the last 3 to 4 years about the prospect of retiring, and yet
Yeah.
here you stand. I've talked to so many players, and it's I don't, for lack of a better word, I don't want to use the word fear factor, but for lack of a better word, is there a percentage of you that doesn't want to miss that camaraderie, that bond that you have in the locker room with those guys? A lot of players tell me it's so hard to let that go. Even though the end is coming, it's hard to let that aspect of it go.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the aspect that all the former players say they miss the most. It's not the actual game. It's being in the locker room. It's going and playing the game, but with your teammates, right? It's it's being around, quite frankly, a group of individuals who are all driven to be the best that they can be. They're not just, subsiding and getting by. Like you guys are all in this together, trying to be the best in the world of what you do.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to come by. And I think, I've learned through talking to former players that is the thing that I'm probably going to miss the most. I think that's the thing that most guys miss. And, I don't, and I mean, I think that's why they say keep playing until you can't, because they know, having been made that decision already, that you're gonna miss that, and you don't want to let that go until you have to.
Jason, one of the things we talk about a lot with Nick Sirianni is he probably doesn't get the credit he deserves for, being either an offensive mind or where we talk about some guys like McVay, et cetera, or some of the other things that are like tangible. It's always intangibles, connecting. And that's a great thing too. Don't get me wrong. But for you, and I remember when things started off 2-5 2 years ago, and the plant speech and all that, and to a man, flower speech. Yes. to a man, you guys, the vets, I mean like you and BG and Fletcher Cox, et cetera, were like, trust me, this guy, we believe in this.
Yeah.
And it didn't come off like the usual BS that sometimes you hear. What is it about Sirianni that molds you guys and motivates you guys?
Well, one, it's incredibly important to him. And he's yes, I think he is more of an offensive expert than he probably gets credit for. But he's not the boy wonder, offensive specialist, defensive specialist. I think what really makes him unique is he's a workhorse, man. He's always trying to get better. He's communicating constantly. He's, he's in all of the meeting rooms. He's fully aware of what's happening, to the extent of like maybe a micromanager, but he allows his coaches to coach and he doesn't micromanage. He toes that line really well of, I know everything everybody's doing, but I'm also letting my guys and players do what they do best and facilitating this whole thing. I think the best head coaches have to be that. They have to be managers of people. They have to be the guys that facilitate an environment that is that promotes growth and creativity and elite level. And I think he does that. He does that in spades. He's one of the best I've been around, and I've been around some really good coaches. I really have, even in college. His team meetings, I don't say this lightly, probably the most productive team meetings I've ever been in an NFL like locker room. They are pointed. There's a theme to each one. A lot of them are the same theme. I mean, it's football. We're going to be accountable. We're going to work hard. We're going to
no turnovers.
Yeah, exactly. You find ways to dress it up and to make it fresh and get guys to listen. And he does that. And, he shows plays where guys screw up in the team meeting. And I think that's important, and then at the same time, he shows plays where that same guy who might've just had a bad play, well, now he's going to be praised for having a good play. So there's not like a imbalance. We're not just out here to rip you guys. Right. We want to celebrate when we do things great, and we want to be accountable and fix things when we do them wrong. And I think that he just, he does a great job with it, man. He's very on top of situational ball, which is extremely important for a head coach. He is very good at what he does, and he's very driven, and, the energy on a daily basis that, motivates guys and pushes guys. he might not have had the best initial press conference or speech in the fans' eyes, but when you feel all that other stuff, man, you know, you can get behind a flower speech when the guy's in your, you know, you got nonstop energy all day, every day, and he puts his heart and soul into it. You know, that metaphor works.
You know, when you're in a profession where guys are constantly looking over their shoulders, wondering who's going to take their position, but you are so secure in who you are and what you do, you go out and endorse them drafting a Cam Jurgens. What did you see in this young man? What did you see in him?
Well, I mean, he's got a lot of tools. I mean, he's incredibly athletic, very, very strong. He's got long arms. He finishes plays. He's a hard worker. I mean, pretty much everything you want to see, you saw in him. You know, first of all, I think the world of Cam Jurgens. I think he has the potential to be better than I have ever been as a center with this skill set he has. And I'm excited to watch that growth as a player and to get an opportunity here at right guard to play this year, especially. But I've seen so many guys handle it the way you just said, D-Gun, of like, who's trying to take my job? And it never works out. It always ends bad. Like if the guy's going to end up being better than you and taking your job, it's going to happen. Now you can either be, you know, pissy about it and have a bad attitude and choose not to be a functioning member of a team and help the guy and be remembered that way. Or you can be a part of this and you can, like, at the very least, if the guy's better than me, or if the guy's whoever I am and there's somebody behind me and he ends up starting like he's going to if he's a great player, you can either be the guy that's remembered as this guy did everything to prevent me from getting this job and didn't help me at all, or you can be the guy that's like, hey, this guy helped me get there and he was a part of my success and career. And I've always like, I've seen so many guys take the wrong mindset on it. And it just is, it's not good for the team. It's not good for the room. And it's really just not good for them, because then ultimately it ends up staining their kind of legacy. So having witnessed that, I think that, you know, and also being at a point in my career where, quite frankly, if he takes my job, I'm fine with it. I think all of that goes into it.
I read something, I can't remember what it was, or it might have been on New Heights. You made reference to Howard Mudd, and I think people forget. This is your fourth regime, right? I mean, you went Andy, Chip, Doug, and now Nick, right?
Yeah. Yep.
First of all, that's incredibly rare. But Howard Mudd was the guy who really had that faith in you from the jump. I think Howie was talking about it on New Heights.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what it was. So, but I thought it was really funny the way, like, Howie was like, hey, we like this guy, but calm down, Howard. The Howard's like, this dude's your starting center. And Howie was like, are you feeling all right? Like, how much did he mean to you, Howard Mudd?
Oh man, I don't know if I'm here today without Howard Mudd. I'm probably not, right? I mean, and Howie kind of said that in the interview. You know, Howard had brought a new mindset of how to evaluate offensive linemen to the Eagles organization. Before Howard, it was all, you know, how big is this guy? How long is he? You know, all of the conventional metrics of an offensive lineman. And Howard really believed that athleticism was more important than any of that stuff. You still need to have baseline levels of power, strength, and size, and that helps. But more than anything, you got to have athletes out on the field. And, you know, I didn't know he was that big of a fan, I guess, when I was drafted in the 6th round, the 3rd offensive lineman taken. I was like, you can't be that big of a fan. There are other guys getting taken before me. But, you know, I knew, you know, the moment I started going out there and his response to how I was playing, that he was in my corner for sure. I mean, I didn't get gifted a starting job, but I got gifted a job to compete for. I mean, most 6th round players aren't even afforded that, right? Like you're in there, maybe you get a chance to compete for a job down the road, but for the most part, you're probably a special teams guy, or you're a depth guy right from the get-go. And Howard, you know, very early on, you know, said, you know, do you want to start? Do you want to play this year? And I'm like, yeah, of course I want to play. I didn't know that was an option, but yeah, I'm in. And he's like, well, just get to know your playbook. And, you know, we had a guy in Jamal Jackson who was very, you know, had been in the league for a very long time and was, had proven success and a proven commodity. So it was certainly, very, very fortunate to one, have Howard in there vouching for me, but also to two, have Howard there, teaching me all of these skills and techniques and things that an undersized player can use to his advantage and excel with.
Hey, is it $1 million question? Is this the last hurrah for Jason Kelce? Is this the swan song? Everybody's going to ask you all season. I'm getting my shot in now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it was $1 million, like if it's $1 million question, does that mean if I'm wrong, I owe you $1 million, or if I'm right, I get it?
Exactly
So
what I mean.
If I'm wrong and I owe you $1 million, I'd probably already owe you $3 million if I answered this before the last 3 seasons. So I think, I don't know, and I'm just taking it one at a time. I wish I could tell you yes, but to be honest, I probably thought the last couple of years would be my last one, and
Sure.
it's hard going into a season to imagine, especially with where I'm at physically and mentally, to do another one. Because I know everything that's ahead of me for this one. So yeah, just one at a time. I can't, in good faith, answer that question, Begun.
You answered it exactly like I thought you would, but I had to
Sure.
ask you.
President Kelce.
I understand.
Jason, let me hit you with this one, because we asked Brandon this, and I thought his answer was great, and it kind of has gone along the lines of the way you guys have approached this. Yeah, we all watched it. We saw what the field conditions were in the Super Bowl, and it's ridiculous. But nobody to a man made an excuse. Nobody.
Yeah.
You hear the 49ers are still complaining about things, but you guys handled it the right way. Was that something that just was innate in you guys, or did you say, hey, look, listen, man, whatever, we lost, let's not sit there and whine about this? Was this just the way everybody answered it, the way everybody took responsibility?
We certainly didn't talk about how to answer these questions. I just, we have a very strong locker room. We had a very strong group of guys. And if you look at across the board, the way the leaders answer the questions, I think that's just kind of ends up being what the team's feeling is, for me personally, I never want to acknowledge that somebody else or something else has control over the outcome. Like, if I'm truly a competitor, this shit's on me.
Right.
And although that's not true, like, obviously there's a lot of factors that go into it. When you're the guy, when you're Jalen Hurts, I know the way he thinks, because we've talked about it. He still beats himself up for this play and that play. It's like, dude, you had like the best performance ever by a quarterback in the history of the Super Bowl. You did just fine, right? But
Exactly.
The reality is, when you're that guy, if you're really a competitor, you think you control stuff. You don't want to acknowledge that somebody else, or a field, or officials, because once you start doing that, you start devaluing who you are and who we are, right? No, we're not giving that to anybody. We control the outcome. We made enough mistakes, and we would have fixed that stuff up. We win that game regardless of what happens with the field, anything. So I think that's the healthy way to go about it. That's kind of how we've chosen to do it.
All right, Jason, I know you got to run. We appreciate you giving us a couple minutes. I want to one more time let everybody know Kelce's annual Team 62 fundraiser for Eagles Autism Foundation, Patty's Green at O'Donnell's Poorhouse, Sea Isle, this Wednesday, June 28th, 6 a to 6 p. And you'll also be guest bartending right around 4 o'clock at the OD, correct?
That's right. Yep. 4 o'clock, guest bartending. Won't be just me. We got a lot of guys from the team and former players in tune. So it's going to be a really, really fun event.
Awesome. Jason, thanks, man. We appreciate you
I
very much.
It. Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. Really
Take
appreciate
care.
it.
All right. You got it. That is the great Jason Kelce. Gunner, that was, man, he's so good. And you know what I love? I like the first 20, 25 minutes, we didn't even talk football. We just, that's kind of guy he is.
That's what I said in the show meeting at 11. I don't want to talk X's and O's with him, man. He's so insightful on so many topics. Anybody can talk X's and O's. We have a lot of guests we talk X's and O's, man. But, when you look at his career, things he's done, and now the podcast is so successful with his brother. And as we saw, first 20, 25 minutes, that's more entertaining than any X's and O's we can talk about.
Way more. Way more. Yeah. He was fine. He's funny, man. He is just a funny dude. And like I said to him, I've said this to you a million times. I wasn't just saying it to him. The fact that he's very much a man of the people. And while you do have to deal with some not so pleasant stuff, it's mostly good. And I give him credit for being that kind of person, because it can be challenging sometimes. But the event that he's got coming up this, next week is a perfect example of him just being out there, man, and with the people. So it's very cool. Very cool. All right. So here's what we'll do.
What's coming up next? Here we come. Here it comes.
Crawl Space Tour is coming up next. I don't know what it's going to be. I'm going to go in there. It's going to be weird. It's not going to be pretty. I can tell you that, but we'll do it. We keep it real here, so we do it. But yeah, I want to thank Jason Kelce for his time as well. Good job out of you, Gunner, getting him. All right. Let's get a timeout. We'll come back with the tour. All right. You ready? All right. Here we go.
Let's do it.
All right. Let's tell the people about Razor Technology. Yes, Razor Technology, a comprehensive managed service provider solution, delivers constant monitoring, on-demand assistance, and rapid issue resolution. Through data-vetted and insight-driven implementation, they strengthen your existing IT resources with both human power and expertise that reduces security risks and downtime while enhancing organizational efficiency and productivity. They are a strategic resource for adaptive and fast-growing companies that need help selecting, implementing, and managing their IT services. Razor Technology's goal is always bigger than one project, one problem, or one upgrade. It's improving the overall functioning of their partners and helping them achieve their business objectives through an ongoing synergistic relationship. Give your IT team the freedom to refocus by augmenting their reach with Razor Technology. Contact Razor Technology today to learn how their managed services can protect and enhance your business by calling 888-797-3282, 888-797-3282, or visit them online at razor-tech.com. That's razor-tech.com.